Okay, so what do we need to make this duffel quilt bag? So the pattern has all of the cutting instructions and fabric requirements that you need. I have prepared all the various pieces here, but we'll set those aside until we need them later. This is my background print, and then we have 4 pieced blocks. So this is the windmill block, which is made up of 4 half square triangle blocks put together. Now I'm not showing you how to piece these because they're all fairly basic. The instructions are on the pattern sheet. This is our log cabin. All of the blocks measure, or they will measure 8 inch square when they're finished, so they're 8.5 at the moment. Flying geese, and then our log rail. Now all of these are just made from scrap fabrics, or you could actually use other blocks that you've already made from other projects that you've got lying around. So it's up to you what you want to use. Now the next thing we have 2 blocks that are cut bigger than we need because we're going to quilt these. These are going to be for zippered pockets. So I've made them bigger than they need to be. We'll quilt them and then we will cut them back. So blocks 1 and block 2. Then last of all, fabric requirements. These are the inside of the zippered pockets. So we'll set those aside. Now the rulers we're going to use are the continuous hearts. So we've got the small 2x1, the 3x1.5, and then we're going to use the 4x2. We won't be using the large one here. The other rulers we'll use are the Freedom Edge 2-inch hearts. Now this is a set of 2 different rulers, and we're going to use both of those. The other ruler that we will use is our 12-inch arc. Now other things that we need 2 zips. Now these are 10-inch, but you don't need to have them that long. I think about 8 inches the length I've said, but this is what I had, so I'm going to use those. We need a couple of meters of cord. We need 4 of these little gizmo things that go on the cord. I can't remember what they're called. And then we need some snaps. Now these are cam snaps, and they're attached using this little tool. I simply bought these off eBay, and they come with lots of different colour snaps, so you can colour coordinate to suit your fabric. And aside from that, we'll need some echo guides and also our crosshair ruler. So I'm going to move over to the machine, and we're going to stitch our 2 pocket blocks. Okay, so here we are at the machine. I have started to stitch this block twice and stopped. First time was because I had Helen on the back and I decided it wasn't thick enough, so I stopped, unpicked, and now I've put batting on the back. Then I stitched it again and then realised I'd used the wrong size template. So, third time lucky, I am using the 3x1.5 inch and the 4x2 inch. So this is from the smaller set, and then this is from the larger set. So what we're going to do, I have measured 2.5 inches up and 2 inches in from the edge. On the 2.5 inch line here, I've drawn a line straight across. So I'm going to bring my bobbin thread up and start again. So with these templates, you're going to need to put stable tape on both sides because we're going to flip them over. Now the templates have an etching along them that we're going to line up with our drawn line. So we're going to place the foot exactly here, needle down, and we're going to slip the template on there and make sure the etching is lined up with our line. And I'm going to stitch from the bottom up to the top. Those threads out of the way. Flip the template over so that it sits just in that little nick up there, and lining up our etching, we'll stitch back to the bottom. Now I'm going to switch over to the 4x2. Line it up with the etching on our line, Make sure the foot is nicely at the bottom there. Stop and then flip it over. Okay. Right, we're going to switch back to the 3 by 1.5. Line that up. Flip it over. Switch back to the 4 by 2. Line that up. Flip it over. And then our last one, we're going to go back to the 3 by 1.5. Flip it over. And down to the bottom. So what we're going to do now is sew in our threads, and then we're going to use our 12-inch arc, and we're going to echo this as a bit of a zigzag. So starting over here, we're going to stitch up until the back of the foot touches this line of stitching, and then we'll stitch down out here and then up and keep going along. So I'm going to sew these threads in now. Okay, so I've zoomed in a little bit here. You can see that there is our start point, and I've got the needle come straight directly out from there. And if we turn that, you'll see that the arc will run directly along the line of stitching, and we'll stitch back until we get to the back of the foot touching the next line, and then we'll know when to turn. Okay, so you can turn it around rather than go backwards. So watch where you're going here at the front. Alright, see, so the foot is just touching there. So then if we turn this way, and we want to come 1/4 inch beyond. So once again, so that the edge of the foot will be lined up with here. So we can see that it's not quite enough. We need to come just about another stitch more. Okay, there we go. Drop that down. Now I'm doing an extra stitch in each corner just to make sure that the corner is defined. And I still need to go one more stitch. Right, turn. Okay, almost done. And then we want to finish level with that last stitching. Okay, right, so now we're going to sew in those threads as well, and that's it for the quilting on that block, and we'll move on to block 2. Okay, block 2. With this one, we've measured up 1 1/4 inches from the bottom, but in 1 1/2 inches from the side. So I've drawn a line 1 1/4 inches all the way across, and then I've come up another line of 3 inches, and then another 3 inches up here with a connecting line right there. So we're going to use 3 different templates on this one. We're going to use the 2x1, the 3x1 1/2, and then the 2x4. So same as before, we'll start with this one and then switch to the next and then the next, and continue along the line, decreasing as we get to the other end. So I've brought up my bobbin thread right down here, lining up my etching. Right, flip it over, line up the etching, switch to the next size, flip it back over. Now, without lining up that etching, it's very easy to get it misaligned, so it is important that you check that alignment is just right. Flip it over, line it up again. Okay, now we're going to stay with this one. Flip it back over, and this is what the template was originally designed for, to do a continuous heart. And my machine's had a bit of a hiccup there, going back on that angle, so I'm going to fix that and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've fixed that problem that was up here. So a lot of machines have a problem with stitching backwards in a certain direction. To overcome that, make sure your foot's low enough, but also you may have to alter your block slightly to change the direction. So as you can see from the rest of the quilting I've done, I've had no issues at all. So to suddenly have that problem is annoying, but we'll have another go. So I've sewn my tails in and I've restarted. I'll just get these tails out of the way. Okay, so we're up to the top there. We'll flip it over. And as I was saying before, this is what the template was originally designed for, to form this lovely heart. And you can see here, there will be just a 1/4 inch. So when we stitch back down, they will just skim each other. And we have the bottom aligned. So don't be hard on yourself if it doesn't skim quite right. It'll still look great. Alright, so we're back at the bottom. So we're going to once again go back down in size of template. line up our etching. Flip it over. And back to the small one. Okay, so we've finished that row along there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually mirror image exactly what we've got here. So I'm going to cut the threads and sew them in, and then we're going to flip it around, and we're actually going to start in the middle and work our way to the end. You'll see in just a moment. Okay, so the first step, so that we know where to start on the other side here, I'm just going to use the arc here as a ruler. We're going to line up from the bottom corner through the middle here up to here. So you can use this etching down the middle of your 12-inch arc to make sure that you're on that center line there. Move it just into place, and we just want to mark that point there. So I'll just put a line straight through. So we're going to turn around, and using our large template, we're going to line up. We're going to start down the bottom here. This side. Start here in the middle. Line up start in the middle, line up the etching here. And what we're going to do is stitch up and around. And what should happen is that this, as you come up here, our stitching should align exactly here, and it will come around and stop here. We'll flip it over and stitch back down, and that will form a circle just over here. So to get this in the exact position, I decided it would be easier to start here in the middle and do one half at a time rather than start at the end and maybe out just a little. Does mean sewing in your tails an extra time, but I thought it was worth it. Alright, so we're here on our middle mark, positioning this, and I'll bring this around so you can see it. If our etching is lined up accurately here, we should come in exactly with our 1/4 inch onto our previous stitching. And you can just see we're just touching and skimming. Continue on to the end, and you see what I mean just here. We'll flip our template over, align our etching here at the bottom, and once again when we come down we should intersect right here in the very middle. Okay, so now that's the only one that will do that, and then we'll do it on this side as well. So now we switch back to the 3 by 1.5 inch. Line up our etching. And this one should just touch at the top there, because remember these lines were 3 inches apart. Line up our etching. And switch over to the smaller one. finishing right there in the corner. So we're going to sew in our threads and then we'll come back and start here and go in reverse to do the other side. Okay, so I've sewn in my threads. I've come back and brought up the bobbin again right here in the middle point. We're going to stitch down and along, and you'll see that once again we've got a 1/4 inch there. We'll skim there, stop in the middle and then flip it over and come back around. So it's exactly what we've done but in reverse. And we'll make sure our etching is lined up. And this is the direction my machine usually plays up in, but it seems to be cooperating now. That aside, and we'll get the next size, the 3 by 1.5. I might just turn that around so that we can see it in this direction. We can use the etching on this center line here to help with lining it up as well. Flip that around. And one last small one. Okay, so we've reached the end now. We've got our whole block. I'm going to sew in these tails, and that's it for the stitching on this block. We can get rid of all our markings and then we'll go on and make the pocket next. Okay, so here we are with our pocket. So as you can see on this side we've got our quilted pocket, and I've drawn a line directly in the middle of our design all the way up to the top of the block. Now I've measured 3/4 of an inch down from the top of the block and drawn another line. Now with our pocket lining, this is the back of the fabric. Now because mine's white, it doesn't make any difference either way, but if you were using a fabric that is different either side, make sure you do this stitching and this work on the back. So what we're going to do is on this, it's on the pattern, we're measuring down 1 inch, and we're drawing a 7 inch by 1/2 inch rectangle centered. Then through the middle of that 1/2 inch we're just drawing a line, and then we'll have little angled corners to come out. And I've also put a line directly down the center of there so that we can use it to align with the line we've drawn down the middle of our quilted block. So what we're going to do, you're going to switch to a walking foot, or on my machine I have an IDT, so I can just use a regular foot, and we're going to stitch around the outside through all these layers. Once we've stitched this, make sure you stitch closely on the corners so that you can they're nicely reinforced. Once we've stitched around there through all the layers, we're going to actually cut down that center line and either both ends, these little angles out to the corners. So we're going to do that now. So just make sure you're lined up on that 3/4 inch line. I just have to turn off ruler foot. And let's see, how do I do that? Take pressure off. Okay. And go back to our regular stitching. All right. Needle down. Right, so hang on, I'm just going to fix my machine. Okay, got the machine sorted out. So as I said, we're going to stitch along this line through all the layers. Now you can see your quilting underneath. We do want to make sure we are clear to miss our quilting. I'm just going to go back. Okay, so I've stitched around there, so I'm going to cut my threads now. Alright, remove the pin. Now to do this, you can simply use an unpicker to make a little slash, and then using your scissors now it's quite thick. And then we're going to snip up towards the corners, but don't cut your stitching. Okay, so we've cut that. So what we're going to do before we turn it through, I'm going to take this to the ironing board and I'm going to press in each of these directions at the seams just to set that seam a little bit and give us a nice smooth fold. Then once that's done, we're actually going to poke our pocket through to the back. And if those seams were, or those edges there were ironed, that would be a nice smooth finish. So I'm going to take that to the iron and press that, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so we have stitched around our rectangle, cut down the middle, pressed it and poked the back piece through, and that's what it looks like from the reverse side. Now with the zip, I have simply just stitched across here to keep the two ends together, and then we're going to place it behind our envelope hole here, and then with a couple of pins we're just going to pin through all these layers, including the zip. Make sure our tab is inside, and then I'll put another pin here, and what we're going to do is right close to the edge, about a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're going to stitch around that little envelope opening. Once we've done that, we'll be able to move on to the next step of folding this up in half, and then very carefully we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam just on this here itself, not through our quilted pocket. So just through the envelope that we've created with that fabric at the back for the pocket. And then what we will have is a hidden pocket behind our panel with just the zip showing at the front here. So I've done the same with the second one here, so I'm going to go and stitch those at the machine now. Okay, so I'm here at the machine and I have my zipper foot attached. It just makes it easier for getting down beside it. Now open the zipper pull to get it out of the way. If it's up here, it will interfere with your foot. So we're just going to stitch. Now I have pinned this in place, but as I said before, you just want to have about a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance running down here beside the zip. You don't want it too close to the teeth. So I'm just going to pause and slide the zipper pull back up. Now it is quite thick what we're sewing through here, because we've got a couple of layers of the batting and the fabric and the zip. And as you can see on this pocket here, our envelope just missed the quilting very nicely. And as we near this end again, I'm going to have to slide the zipper pull out of the way. Just going over the teeth there. Now make sure that you don't use a metal teeth zipper here, otherwise it'll be too difficult to sew over it. I'm just going to go backwards a little bit, turn that off, and then knock that off. Okay, so there we have our zip installed. I'll sew that thread in there. And so as I said before, what we're going to do now is we'll turn this over, trim the excess zipper off if you've got any, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along here, along the top there, and then down the sides. You might want to just pin that in place and make sure that you're not going to catch anything else with you. So I'm actually going to turn it so that I'm sewing this way after I've pinned it, so that at least I can fold that back out of the way and I can have a clear line of vision for sewing this here. Okay, so I have pinned along here. It seems to pull in a little bit there, but you can pull that out as you start to stitch. So we're going to start at the bottom down here, stitch up and around, fold this back as we go, and then stitch down the other side to the bottom corner, and that will enclose our entire pocket. So I've put the 1/4 inch foot back on my machine. Just keep this well back. You can't have anything less than this inch in the size of your pocket for where you've made your envelope to having an inch at the edge of it, because then you wouldn't have enough room to be able to sew this seam like we are now. I'm just going to use my tweezers to pull that out. Caught on some thread. Okay, so our next step, now that we've sewn that and we have our pocket on the back, we're going to trim back our quilted block here to measure 8.5 by 10.5. So 10.5 being the width, 8.5 the height. Now when we do that, just make sure you're not including this pocket that you've just sewn, so you can fold that back as you go to measure it up. Now when you do measure the 8.5 by 10.5, make sure you center that where the center of your design is. That's why I haven't removed this mark here, because I will use that to help work out the measurement. Also be aware of how far you've got to go down here at the bottom of the block and at the sides, so that it is all nicely centered. Okay, so I'm going to trim back the larger pocket first so that I can try and match them, because this has got a much wider stitched or quilted design on it. So 10.5 wide, 8.5 high. I've got it centered on the 5.25 inch line, and you can see that that 2 inch runs just across the top of that design there, and at the top here above the pocket it's about 1/4 inch, the 1 inch line is. So I think that's pretty good. So down the bottom we'll have just over 1/2 inch there before we trim that. So I have on the back, I've folded back the little flap of at the top of the zip from the pocket. Now the ruler isn't quite down on the block because of the zip holding it up out of the way, so just be aware of that. And now I'll measure the 8.5 to 10.5. Okay, so that's our pocket there. Now that that is done, I can go and remove all my markings on here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch our whole quilt top panel. So our blocks that we've pieced earlier are 8.5 inches. So we're going to stitch one on either side and make that a whole panel. Then we're going to do the same with the other end with the 2 remaining blocks and the other pocket. Then we'll attach that to our main panel and then the side panels onto that. Okay, so I've pieced the main panel together now. We've got our pocket, we've got a pieced block at either side of the pocket, then we've joined those and the same at the other end. We have then attached that strip to our center panel, same at the other end. Then we have added this border, one on either side, right the way along. I have then made a quilt sandwich out of my backing fabric and batting. Now when I have attached this with the basting spray, I haven't put any behind the pocket or this quilted panel because we want that pocket to sit freely inside. This won't be getting any more quilting, the quilted blocks, but we will be quilting all the other sections. So the first section we're going to start with is our main background here. For this one we're going to use the Freedom Edge 2-inch hearts number 2 template, and we're just going to randomly quilt in a design all over this center panel. So just start somewhere up near the corner and we're going to work our way through. I'm going to change to a white thread because I want my quilting to be visible. I'm not actually going to quilt in the ditch for any of these blocks because I don't think it's really necessary for what we're doing, because we will be quilting all the different aspects of this whole panel. So I'm going to move over to the machine now and set up. Okay, so here we are at the machine. I've brought my bobbin thread up right on the edge of the border, and we're going to use the Hearts 2, Freedom Edge Hearts 2. We're going to start out just doing one of these. This is completely random, so we'll just don't overthink it. We're going to stitch down here, swap over and do a heart, and then we'll swap back to this, and we'll keep going all over the place. I am going to keep within this fabric here. It doesn't matter if this overlaps one of the hearts or anything like that as we go. It's just going to be an all over random pattern. So this is one of those ones where we have to lift it up and then we'll move over. And I'm going to always stitch these from the bottom of the heart. Just change the direction of the S and also the hearts. Just to mix it up a little bit. keep going on this, and I'll stop back in and show you where I'm up to a little bit further on. You get the idea though, just random, stitch some hearts and some S's, and see what you get in the end. Okay, I'm just about done here. I'm going to do one more, and then I'll just stitch an S out to the border. Now this part will take a while, that's why I haven't filmed the whole thing. And then I'm just going to finish out here. Right, so I'll sew those threads in, and as you can see, it is entirely random. Just have some fun and see what you come up with. Okay, you can see up here at this edge here, I have a bit of an empty gap. That's just how it turned out. So I'm going to add a couple of extras, start with a S and come in and do a heart, and then just to fill it in a tiny bit. So if you find yourself in this situation where you've worked your way around and you've actually missed a little section, come back and fill it in, and that way it won't look a bit odd and empty. I just want to add, when you're doing this, don't forget you can flip the template over for when you do the S part of the design, because that can help put you in a better position. Instead of going to the left, you can go to the right. So don't forget, you can flip that over and it will just alter your design that little bit and help you get to where you need to be. Right, I want to get up to here. So yeah, that would put me in a good place. And this will probably be the last heart. Yep, I think that should just about do it. Actually, no, I might put one more of these in. Just going to continue along until I get to the edge, and that will do. Okay, so next step, we're going to quilt each of the pieced blocks. Everything is on the pattern, but we'll step our way through it, and I'll just get that set up now. Okay, so we're first of all going to stitch the windmill block, and we're using the Freedom Edge 2-inch Hearts #1 template. Now the important thing on this one is positioning this tip right on the intersection at the center here. Now just here is an etching on the ruler, which is the halfway point, so we want that to run directly on our seam. Now we're using the piecing of this block as our crosshairs, so you don't actually have to draw any. So what we're going to do is actually start, so we want, once you've got your template in place, we want the tip to sit against the back of our ruler foot. So we're starting 1/4 of an inch in from that centre point, right on that seam. Right, so that's going to sit there. We'll know we're in the right place because we'll use this etching as our guide, and we're going to stitch up and around the template until we come back to this middle point right here on the seam. Stop right there. Now we're going to bring the template around. I'll just get these tails out of the way until we're going to stop in this bottom right hand corner of the bottom of the template, and we're going to line up the tip and the etching here with our center line. And we're actually going to stitch along, up around the heart, and then back over until we finish on the other side seam. Right, so we're finished up on the side seam there. Now we're going to rotate the template until the heart, just like where we started, the tip of the template is right there at the center, and we'll line up our etching, and I'll just get these tails out of the way. We're going to stitch the heart up and around. And then stop right when we reach the seam again. Then we're going to put the bottom right corner once again, line up there, and we're going to stitch the whole template again along here, up around the heart, and then back over to the side seam. Once again, we'll spin that around, line up the tip of the heart there, the template where that little gap is sprung up, and my foot just got caught there. Now I've just reached this intersection and I can see that I have a bit of a loop just formed. It didn't like stitching in that direction. I'm going to see if I can fix that, and then I'm going to continue around doing what we've exactly just done. So what will happen next is we'll be from here in this position, the bottom right, do the full one again, come back and do the middle bit and keep going until we get around to the other corner. I'm just going to fix this thread. Okay, so I fixed that thread. Okay, once again, tip of the heart around here and line up there, and we're going to stitch the heart. So if you know your machine is going to have issues with sewing a certain direction, think about your quilting and try and change the direction. So I could normally stitch up and around here and back, but then I might get a problem here in this section. So by coming down and around, that should eliminate that problem. Okay, so we're here again. So we're going to put the bottom right corner there. To there. Now we just simply have to stitch the last half of our heart. So we will have the tip of the template right there on the center intersection. And almost back to the start. There we are. Okay, so there's our design. I'm going to put down footer. I'm going to sew in those tails now, and then we'll move on to the next block.